Assault, evasive, guard, intel, support. That spells AEGIS. And if you're in the market for a lightning-quick tactics game to slam down onto the table, you can't go wrong with AEGIS. Just like all its combining robots, there are a ton of small mechanics that come together to make something way bigger than the sum of its parts. However, all of those parts can make this one a bit daunting to bring to the table. So, let's learn how to teach AEGIS 2nd Edition! Huge thanks to Zephyr Workshop for sponsoring the episode. Nani? Oh, never mind, it's just the teacher's guide. This thing sums up the whole teach for you, so just enjoy this video like it's a filler beach episode, and know that the recap will sum up anything important you might miss. Now, there's no point in learning all the rules to your favorite games if you can't even get anyone to play it. So, let's learn how to get AEGIS to the table. The target markets for AEGIS are tactics gamers looking for a faster, more accessible entry into their favorite genre, and anime nerds who like Gundams. Those two groups of people do not need to be sold on this game. I've worked the AEGIS booth at a handful of board game conventions now, and I promise you, these people are already down to give this game a shot. See, look, my name is in the rulebook, and they even spelled it right. Combined between these two games are over 200 unique robots that can be arranged into countless different team combinations. On each of those named unique robots is a one-of-a-kind and gorgeous work of art done by a wide variety of artists, giving you a ton to look at while you're smashing your opponents into scrap. In addition to the artwork, the gameplay itself has the exact same amount of scope. There's a bunch of different ways to engage with AEGIS, from area control to a draft mode, as well as the standard beat each other up mode. There's also a shockingly deep solo boss fight mode and a 2-player versus campaign for those interested. You can play with 2 all the way up to 6 players if you splurge on the 6-player battle mat, but unlike most tactics games, you're not going to be sitting there for 12 hours to finish it. Want to get someone excited to combine some robots? Here's a 30-second pitch you can use to get anyone excited on trying some AEGIS. Do you like giant robots? Of course you do. In AEGIS, you get to control 5 of them, and each one falls under one class of robot: Assault, Evasive, Guard, Intel, and Support. It was an acronym the whole time. In this incredibly deep yet quick tactics game, we'll be moving and shooting robots on this hex board, aiming shots and blocking bots, all in an effort to blow up every single enemy on the board. But in your most dire of moments, when everything seems hopeless, you can use the power of teamwork and friendship to combine your robots together. Your bots can merge and combine their powers into unique combinations, not just once, not just twice, but all the way up until your whole team of 5 has Voltroned. With sharp wits and sharper giant robot swords, you can blast your way through anything in your way or die trying. Originally, the 30-second pitch was just going to be me singing the AEGIS theme song, but they didn't want to pay me to do that. So honestly, probably a good thing, but I did still want to sing the theme song. Anyways, let's get the game set up. One of the most critical parts of any game with this many characters is choosing the right ones for your friends. Both AEGIS 1 and 2 come with pre-built teams that, from the moment you open the box, are ready to roll out. However, not all these teams have equal levels of complexity. On screen now are my rankings for the complexity of the 6 simplest pre-built teams for AEGIS 2 when it comes to teaching them. Notably, the least complex by far is Ashla, who, if you're playing with larger groups, definitely needs to go to the person with the least experience and confidence with board games. She moves and she shoots. That's about it. Also of note, on the little cards that come with the game that tell you the makeups of each team, there are short descriptions that tell you what each team is about. You can use these to figure out who's going to enjoy what teams. I've put these with the rankings on the teacher's guide, so you've got them for easy reference. Any of these starting 6 teams are fine for a first-time player. Just know that the later they are in that list, the more whoever's going to be playing them will have to learn, and the more you'll have to explain. Other than that, you're just playing a standard game of AEGIS for your first go-around, so once everyone's got their robots on the starting line, you're ready to rumble. So, this isn't a slight against the game or anything, but I've got the memory of a notably forgetful goldfish. As such, I struggle to no end remembering which of my robots are which. It's easy enough when it's the start of the game and you have them all in a line, all squared up with the cards in front of you. But the second they start moving around and moving between each other and blowing each other up, it's over for me. There are unique tokens for each of the robots, so it's not like I can't just look at them. But I also have terrible vision. Regardless, I can easily see folks like me struggle with this when trying to learn this game and especially teach this game. So, using the power of Blender, a 3D printer, and my brain, I came up with a solution. I designed these little markers you can use on the standees to make sure that you don't mix them up. You can either use them to indicate the team, with the plastic stands included in the game to indicate the robot class, or you can set them up the other way around. It's entirely up to you. You absolutely do not need these, but they are great if you're really, really forgetful like I am, and are also trying to teach the game at the same time. I've linked to my printables page in the description where you can grab the files for yourself. As with every teach, you'll want to start off with 3 key components where you set the stage, the goal, and the expectations. Fortunately for me, these are all extremely straightforward with AEGIS, so we're going to go over those super quick so we can get right into the teach. For setting the stage, you're more than welcome to dip into the really shockingly absurdly deep story that is the AEGIS lore. I mean, just like, this is the relationship chart between characters. You can't pay me to learn all that. Jokes aside, most of the lore is in the separately sold scenario book if you're into that kind of thing. The short version is that you're commanding a team of robots in a robot fighting tournament for cash and glory. That's the short version. The shorter version is anime robots, woo! Also, as with every board game, playing music is critical. I believe your favorite anime soundtracks are more than appropriate for this, but soundtracks for things like Tron and Cyberpunk 2077 are more than acceptable. For setting the goal, your first turn or two is going to mostly just be moving your robots around, and what position that they're going to be is determined by their abilities, which is you're just gonna go over in a second. Other than that, you're just trying to blow everyone else up. It's not rocket science. It's mecha anime science. And for setting the expectations, I think the biggest thing that I would emphasize is how the entire first game is going to be a bit of a learning experience, more so than most games. AEGIS is way closer to a war game than your average board game, and with that comes a necessity to understand the system powering the whole thing, but not necessarily every tiny rule in the rulebook. I would just make sure that everyone is really ready to lock in for the first 10 to 20 minutes of the game, just to make sure that everyone catches all the important parts of the teach. Once you get how AEGIS works, it's a breeze. So maybe make sure everyone's ready to go before you start breaking rules down. When it comes to teaching this game, there are 2 major hurdles, and we're going to tackle them one by one. The first one is getting people into the rhythm of their turn, and the second is getting everyone familiar with how actions work. Divert everyone's attention to their cards, because it's time for Card Anatomy, Part 1. The best part of this first turn is that, at least for the very first time you ever play the game, you don't really need to care about anything other than the top and bottommost parts of the card. Firstly, something to note is the class marker on the top left. Every robot has a class, and the letter determines what class it is. This will determine what kind of thing that robot was built for, and is a good starting point to inform you what you should be doing with them. At this point, I would describe them using the summaries listed on page 4 of the rulebook. After briefly mentioning the classes, the most important bit to look at are those green energy icons in the top right corner. These represent how much juice each robot is contributing to the team. During your first turn, have everyone count up these icons on their basic robots, and then the sum total is how much energy they have across their whole team to work with each turn. Have everyone place their max energy marker token on their character's energy trackers. You'll explain that at the start of future turns, you will recharge to this value, and the maximum value will change as your team combines and more likely gets blown up. Just like real life, everything you do takes energy, so it's a really, really important thing to keep track of. The second thing we care about is the giant number in the hexagon at the top middle of every card. This is the maximum number of spaces that a robot can move each turn. Each hexagon a robot moves costs 1 energy. That's why the number is on a hexagon. Also of note, some robots will have little wings next to that number. If it does, it has flight and can move over basically anything on the board, though nothing can end their turn on an obstacle or another robot. Finally, the last thing we care about for right now is the number on the bottom right of the card. This is a robot's integrity, or in other words, how much health that robot has. If a robot has this number reduced to 0, it explodes. And if all of your robots have this number reduced to 0, your chance to win explodes. So once you've covered those 4 things, class, energy, movement, and integrity, everyone should have enough information to make an educated guess on where best to move their pieces to. So now you're going to start moving your pieces and showing how a basic turn will play out. AEGIS has a super simple turn structure. Each robot moves and/or does a thing. Repeat with each robot until you're out of robots to move and/or do things with. I slide my team back at the start of my turn and then slide them forward a little bit one at a time as I activate them, so I don't forget which ones have already gone. Again, goldfish. Since you're up first, you're going to demonstrate how simple the first turn is by basically moving every single robot some amount, calling out the steps for each robot. As you do this, you'll want to emphasize that it's as simple as 1 energy spent per 1 hex moved. It's really easy to forget decreasing your energy unless you get in the habit of doing it as you go, and we want everyone to be in this habit during the first turn with less going on. If you don't, you will have some headaches to deal with later. While moving your robots, I recommend moving your bot with the furthest range as close as it possibly can to the second player. This just maximizes the chance that you can hit someone on your second turn. I don't know if this is strategically viable or not, but it sure does streamline the teach. Once you finish scooting your robots, there are two things to call out really quick. First is that you likely didn't use all your energy, and that's okay, especially when it's this first turn when you're not taking actions. And secondly, that there's no upkeep step that you'll need to do once you've done all the things with your robots. You can just pass the turn. It's time for the other players to start taking their turns, and that means it's time for analysis paralysis. Even at this point in the game, there's technically thousands upon thousands of combinations of where you can put all your robots. If someone seems pretty hesitant to start moving their robots on their first turn, there are two approaches that I recommend going for, and really these work at any point in the game. The first one is this is the learning game approach, where you emphasize that it's their first time and they should just go for it and not worry about making the perfect move. Just enjoy the ride and learn as you go. Some people hate this approach, and they always find my comment sections. The second approach is to add in abstraction, or in other words, lean into the narrative of what's happening in the game. So instead of having them worry about what space to move their robots to, maybe ask them, what kind of robot do you want in the front? What do you want in the back? Do they want their team to stay close together, or should they spread out? Do they want to play it risky, or do they want to hide behind cover at the start? Based on what they say, you can then lightly guide them to specific spaces to put their robots onto to keep the game moving at this early stage when everyone's just getting their feet wet. Alrighty, at this point, everyone's moved their robots, which means that, technically speaking, you made it through your first round of AEGIS. However, we both know it's cheating to call that a real round. I mean, all everyone did was move their robots. And I don't care. You made it through your first round. Woohoo! Now, it's on to the second round, where things get dicey. Let's bully our friends! As the first player, you get to be the person who fires the first shot. As such, it's time for Card Anatomy Part 2. You'll need to direct everyone to look at their cards once again, as we're about to cover the most important part of AEGIS, which are the actions. The beauty of these is that if you can read one of them, you can read basically all of them. You're going to want one or two cards that have a single attack and a multi-attack on them in hand for your explanation. And I'm going to say this again, this is the most important part of the teach to nail. If you can get everyone on the same page with these actions in one go, you'll guarantee that the rest of the game goes smoothly. Mess this up, and you'll be answering question after question as everyone at the table gets more and more confused. No pressure. The first thing we're going to talk about is what actions encompass. While most of them are going to just be dealing damage, actions can also shove robots around, apply buffs and debuffs, and so on. Sometimes you'll use actions on your own team members rather than enemies, depending on what the action is, so just keep that in mind. Next up, you'll go over the structure of an action. There are four main parts: cost, accuracy, damage, and range. At larger player counts, you may genuinely want to have them repeat the summary after you. Cost, accuracy, damage, range. It's important that the table knows that literally every action in the game is structured like this, so even if they're a bit overwhelmed, you just gotta get it down for one action, and then you'll have it down for all of them. Once you've covered the structure, you just need to go through each step, starting with the cost. The big thing to emphasize here is that the first number equals both how much energy you spend and how many dice you roll. It's the same number for both. Just how it was one hex moved per one energy spent, one energy, one dice. Up next is accuracy. You'll break down the differences in how the two types of action, single hit and multi-hit, work, and make sure that you're pointing out the two different symbols as you go. For both types of actions, the number shown on the accuracy is what number you need to roll equal to or higher on the dice. And you'll emphasize that the difference between the two is that for multi-hit moves, every die that rolls equal to or higher than the accuracy does the thing, which is why it's called a multi-hit move. For a single hit, all the dice that you roll have to be equal to or greater than the number shown on the action to do that thing once. That's accuracy. Next up is damage. It's the star of the show. This is the thing your action does either once or multiple times depending on the action type. What each action does depends on its background. Hefty majority of these are going to be this one, which is just straight up dealing damage to whatever you hit. Some of these action types are more straightforward than others, so while you're going through your first turn in a moment, that's where you'll explain some of the ones on your team and get into more detail there. In the meantime, I would just mention to the table that they can use the rulebook as well as those shockingly good reference cards that I didn't get out yet to see what each type of action does. And then you'll just mention that you'll go through them in more detail as you encounter each type. Once you've gotten all that out of the way, it's time for range. If the cost, accuracy, and damage were the what and the when of the action, range is the where of the action. There are two types: single target, which are the majority of actions that you'll see, and area of effect. You'll start by explaining single target actions. Single target actions will show one number or a range of numbers which just indicate where the attack can target, either up to that number of spaces away or a number of spaces away between those two numbers. Area of effect actions also come in two flavors that you'll need to explain. Either they just have the spiky circle, which means that they affect every robot within that number of spaces away, excluding the robot doing the thing. Or they'll have a single target in an area of an effect, which work kind of like a grenade. The most important trick and the easiest thing to forget or misunderstand about range is that you can't just point your guns wherever you want. All actions always target a space with a robot on it. Safety first. Those of you who know the rules also know I skipped over how line of sight works, and that's just going to be something that you demonstrate during your turn so that you can get through all the essentials as quickly as possible. Hands down, getting through actions is basically the final boss of teaching Aegis. Ironically, all the parts combined make this into the beast that it is, but if you can get through this, you're in the clear. There is still more to cover, but all of what we just went through will get you through your first 2 or 3 turns. I'll also take a sec to address that this is only one way to teach this part of the game. Like with every episode of How to Teach, I'm only able to cover my one-size-fits-most approach for teaching a game. So if you've got a different way that you'd approach teaching this game, go ahead and let everyone know your method in the comments. I love to see all the different ways people can bring board games to the table. All right, back to your turn. During your second turn, you want to start some fights. Specifically, you want to instigate some fighting with the next player to go, regardless of player count, just to get some more examples on the table as quickly as possible, both on your turn and on your next opponent's turn. While you do this, you're going to want to make sure that you're narrating your turn out loud as you take it, which will start to help the rules click into place. You can also do some other minor teach by example moments, such as not activating all your robots, performing an action without moving if possible, and especially using the position of your robot to explain line of sight. Anything you can do to show the idiosyncrasies of Aegis instead of just talking about them will make this teach go by so much faster. So after you've done your turn activating the robots like you'd like to, attacking, buffing, debuffing, or what have you, now you're on to the next player's turn. There's a few things that you'll want to be doing. As they perform their actions, you may find it useful and expeditious to offer options for their actions, such as listing robots that are currently within range, robots they should target with specific actions, and so on. Commander abilities are going to be unique to each player's team, and they're going to inform players on that particular team's playstyle. At some point, I'd make sure to clock which players have which commander abilities and just gently bring up that they have access to those abilities during their turn. There's a good reference towards the back of the rulebook that you can use to explain these at the table. Again, these are mostly straightforward, it's just using them effectively that can be a little tricky for a first-time player, so just keep an eye out for when people have access to extra actions or rerules. Any game with this much depth is going to have a lot of options on your turns, and so by boiling the infinite choices down to just a few conceptual options, you're helping narrow down what they need to consider. Then all they have to do is execute from there. Proceed with everyone's second turns as normal, and once you get back to your turn, everyone should now know like 90% of the rules to Aegis. So now you can actually congratulate everyone at the table for making it through the hardest part of the teach. Now that you've gone through the bulk of the rules, we're at the point in your teach where things can be pretty situational. So as you move forward, you're going to want to keep an eye out for these situations. As you're blasting apart each other's mechs to a million pieces, you may need to rely on the power of friendship and teamwork, which means it's time to combine. Around the end of turn 2, I'd have players start taking a peek at their little stack of 4 to 5 combined robots to see what kind of combinations they have to work with. And to avoid rules overload, you really only need to talk about combining towards the beginning of turn 3, or if someone's got a robot that's really low on health. When explaining how combining works, there are 4 requirements to combining. Positioning, the robots need to be touching. The energy cost, you pay energy equal to however much the new robot produces in order to combine. It's like when you get a new phone, you gotta charge it first. You'll need to spend one of the actions of the 2 robots that you're combining, and finally, the classes need to match with the robot that you're combining into. Then you'll move on to the 2 benefits of combining. You get to refresh the robot, so you get to remove all damage, buffs, and debuffs, and you get to utilize combining actions and abilities. Combine actions are super easy because they basically work how they would if you were to use them at any other point in the game. Here, you just get to use them for free when you combine, meaning you don't spend the energy or even roll dice for it, they just work. Worth noting is that combined robots otherwise have summoning sickness, so they can't move and they can't take actions unless an ability says they can. I like to think of it as the animation budget running out, so they have to hold like a cool pose for a while before they're able to go back to the fight. Okay. You've got people combining, fighting, all that good jazz. Now we need to talk about the consequences of a robot explosion. If a robot dies, you'll take their piece off but leave the stand to show that there's still a robot corpse there. They obviously won't contribute energy to your team, so you'll need to make sure that whoever's robot just exploded adjusts their max energy when it gets back to their turn. Other than that, the two big things to bring up when someone loses a robot is that while normally robots block line of sight, broken ones do not. The second thing, and cooler thing, is that these scrap heaps can still be used for combining. In fact, combining with a broken robot is the catch-up mechanic in this game. It's called scrap combining, and it comes with a few perks. All broken robots are basically the same. If you're looking to combine with one of your robot corpses, they all count as any of your other broken robots, regardless of what actually died where. The other perk of scrap combining is that by recycling and saving the planet, you don't have to spend the energy to combine. The new robot still can't do anything on their turn except for the combining abilities when they come onto the field. So it's not like it's a huge perk, but it lets you do some more stuff with your other robots instead of needing to commit a chunk of your energy for the turn to combine. You've taught movement, you've taught actions, you've taught combining, you've taught abilities, attributes, classes, line of sight, and more. You're officially through the bulk of the teach, and now all it is a matter of odds and ends. If you were to read the rulebook, like I always recommend doing before watching these videos, you may have noticed that I skipped a lot of details in this one, and that's on purpose. When teaching this game, what I talked about here is all you have to talk about for everyone to enjoy the game at its core. What you need to know is how to read the cards and how to combine. Once your players get that down, they'll be more than equipped to make it through their first game of Aegis. Oh look, it's the teacher's guide. This thing unfolds like your favorite Transformer into a step-by-step guide that you can use at the table to give the perfect teach. These sum up everything we covered in this video, so if you're going to be teaching Aegis anytime soon, go ahead and check out the link to my Patreon page where you can download or print this bad boy for free and be ready the next time Aegis hits the table. And speaking of my Patreon, a huge thanks to everyone who supports me over there. I can't thank you guys enough for sticking with me and helping these videos get made. And I can't forget to thank Zephyr Workshop for sponsoring the video as well. Like I mentioned, I've worked with them at multiple conventions now. They're probably responsible for me even working in the board game industry in the first place, so this was an extra special honor to get to do this video for them. And with that, I think we're at the end of the episode. So now, credit sequence.